This is the Weekly You Demon. Some of us call it You to Man. So sit back with a sarsaparilla and enjoy.
Alright, slamming into Lent. Welcome to Lent 2019. What are you guys giving up? I'm giving up pop and energy drinks. I'm not really addicted to either one of them, but I do like 5-hour energy too often, and once in a while one of those Kickstarters, Mountain Dew Kickstarters, so I'm going to give those up unless I have a migraine or a hangover. If I have those two things going, then I'm not giving those things up. I need those to get back on track. A lot of people ask me, hey, why don't you give up drinking for Lent? And to be honest, that to me is almost like when they took the holy water out of the founts during Lent. I was like, you don't deprive yourself of a sacramental during the holiest season of the year. And yeah, I view alcohol kind of as a sacramental. And I've written about this in various places, but basically it comes down to this. A couple of drinks lets you loosen up, takes off the stress. It lets you see things as they really are. And seeing things as they really are really is the height of the mystical life. I mean, when people emerge from their mystic trances, it's because they saw things as they really are, and really will be after death. That's why they're so intense. There's a small slice of that in a couple of beers or a couple of gin and tonics. Because when you're drinking, you shrink yourself. You shrink the ego. And you just kind of look out and see. And when you do that, you see things as they are. And then you see things also as they're created by God, which is a great good. God created things. God himself is good, so everything he created is good. And when you can look out without refracting it through your ego and see that, it's a great blessing. So no, I never give up drinking during Lent, nor will I ever give up drinking during Lent. As long as we're on the topic of Lent, let me come out with this. If you meet the Buddha, kill him. And I know I've used that quote before. I think it's probably the most famous quote in Zen Buddhism. It really does highlight what Buddhism is all about. And I'm going to tie that into your Lenten practices here. So bear with me for the next couple of minutes. When the Zen master says, if you meet the Buddha, kill him, what he's trying to say is, don't get wrapped up in this subject-object world. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, Buddhism is steeped in a thing called Pantheistic monism. They perceive all things are one. And I've touched on this a couple of times in the other podcasts. The way the Buddhists see things, and again, not necessarily the Zen Buddhists. Zen Buddhism's different than Buddhism itself, but Zen Buddhism's roots are in Buddhism. So the Buddhist sees all things as one. And it says that because, as I've pointed out previously, if there was only one thing in the whole world, and that was all you had, you wouldn't have that because you wouldn't be there either. It would just be everything. And it would just be. That's it. The only reason we give names to things is because we distinguish them from other things. So, in the Buddhist world, they're saying, look at, therefore, all there is just Brahman. That is the thing, the one thing. All these names we have for different things, those are caught in Maya, M-A-Y-A, caught in illusion. And they focus on this, and again, this is very Jacques Derrida type, deconstruction type thinking. They're saying the only reason we have names for anything is to distinguish them from other things. Therefore, those things don't have meaning in and of themselves. They're strictly constructs of the rest of the world around them to distinguish them. Again, it's confusing, but it makes sense. You just maybe gotta think about it a little bit. And by the way, I hate the frickin' phrase, think about it. When someone says something, think about it. It's like, no, I don't want to think about it. Every time an idiot tells me to think about it, I know I don't want to. But anyway, think about it. Think about what the Buddhist is saying here. It makes a lot of sense. So the Zen Buddhists, kind of riffing off that doesn't want you out there thinking in terms of subject-object, this or that, we, they, things like that, us, them. They don't want you thinking like that. They want you to see everything as one. So the Zen approach, when you're looking out in the world, kind of like the world that I see after a couple of gin and tonics, the Zen master wants you to look out at the world and just look, just see, just be. They want you to see with the eyes of a little child. They don't want you to be in a Nike commercial. They want you to see with the eyes of a little child. Because a little kid, he doesn't think about himself. You know, he's never thinking about his enjoyment. Like, boy, I really want to do that. Or I really hate that. The kid just viscerally reacts with glee to this or that. It's not till around age 4 so that kid starts to differentiate himself from the world. The Zen wants to go back to those toddler ages when you just enjoyed, just did this, just did that. And that's what I mean when I talk about that Zen wants you to smash through the subject-object world. They want you to eliminate that distinction. And the biggest, baddest gorilla in the subject-object world is the self. And that's what you gotta keep in mind. Zen focuses on eliminating the self. Very, very similar to what the goal of Christianity is, with its goal to be selfless, pointed to the other. Zen does a very similar thing. They want you to shrink the self. You know, and this is, again, a little tricky, but I think this is crucial to help you kind of understand what you're doing this Lent. And I think it's healthy to take the Zen attitude into Lent. Because let's face it, as Catholics over the past week, we've all thought to ourselves, oh, I'm going to give up soda. I'm going to give up drinking. I'm going to give up, you know, banging swimsuit models. I had to give that up a couple years ago. Hey, so I'm going to pray more. I'm going to get up early in the morning to do a holy hour. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's all self-centered. And that's a problem. You know, again, there's a thing that St. Thomas said. He goes, no person can be so selfless that he doesn't desire his own happiness. So, yeah, keep that in mind as well as you go through this. And again, it's all confusing. You gotta kind of work it through yourself. But you gotta face up to the fact that when you're doing all these holy exercises, it's all self-centered. It's all about you. But the Zen attitude kind of gives you, I think, a light on how to do this. So, yes, you are going to give up pop. You are going to give up banging the supermodels. You are going to get up early and do the holy hour. Yes, you are going to do all these things, but never, ever think about doing them. Just do. And in that sense, you're doing the right thing, but yet you're not thinking about doing the right thing. And to get in that Zen mindset, you're going to need to make a lot of holy hours. That's where Zen meditation comes in. That's where any type of prayer comes in. You want to get yourself in that mindset, and you need to keep that mindset throughout the day, because throughout the day, as the vicissitudes of life hit you, you're going to keep on lapsing back into that subject-object world, thinking about yourself. Like, this job sucks. This traffic sucks. I want to get drunk. So, you do the prayerful contemplation, whether it's a rosary or some Zen, Zazen type practice. You do those things to give yourself a mooring, balance throughout the day, a ballast throughout the day. And I'll be honest with you, and I know I'm not alone. You'll see people talk about this as Lent wears on. I think it's because people don't approach don't approach Lent with the proper Zen outlook. I think that's why they find themselves so frustrated halfway through. Or as so often happens, you get to Holy Week, and you're at Monday, Thursday, or Holy Thursday, and you think, I didn't progress at all. I didn't get anywhere. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe it's because you entered Lent with all these good intentions, but all these good intentions were very self-focused. So the good intentions were there, but your ego wasn't shrunk, and you all did it for yourself, not intentionally. So you need to look into it, you know, with a selfless mindset. And it's all self-serving. That's what's so psychologically tricky about this. So you're doing the whole Zen thing to progress yourself anyway. And Zen kind of works through those things. And I would like to do it here at some point. But Zen kind of works through those things. An analogy I like to give is I do a lot of gardening. I have a huge plot. Some people say it's a small farm, whatever. And if I start thinking ahead of time of everything I have to do at that garden or farm, well, say for the next month or so, I just want to curl up in a fetal position and cry. Because there's just like no freaking way I can do it all. The only way I can do that garden, do that farm, is what they say, one step at a time. So when you're plowing that row, I don't think about how far I have to get. I just start plowing that row. And then after you do it for 10 minutes, you're like, oh wow, look how far I got. Whereas if you're thinking every step of the way, I got 10 more to go, I got 10,000 more to go, whatever, it's all drudgery. But you just focus on just doing the plowing. And then after a certain amount of time, you turn back and you say, hey, I made my good advance here. And I think it'd be that way with Lent too. Don't think about the daily holy hour. Don't think about giving up the pop or whatever it is. Just do it. Look out with the eyes of a toddler child. And then maybe come Holy Thursday, you look back and think, wow, I guess I made a lot of progress here. And then move on. Are we all clear on why tariffs suck? I want to start podcasting more about economics. I think my next Theology on Tap is going to be the lecture is going to be titled Catholic Economics. Thomas Wood says there is no such thing as Catholic economics more than there's a Catholic biology or Catholic physics or whatever. He goes, it's a social science and they are what they are. He basically says it's a social science and, it is what it is, so you can't have Catholic economics. I'm not sure I agree with them because I think Catholic economics starts with the view of man. And when you start with the view of man, you're necessarily bringing in notions of natural law, what man is, and then how man behaves, and then you tie the economics into that. Now, to the extent that Thomas Woods is saying, well, yeah, but once you understand these premises of what man is, these fundamental rules of what man is, at that point it's just descriptive. And therefore it's not Catholic at all. And I appreciate that, but the whole idea that you start with the vision of man and natural law, that to me makes it somewhat of a Catholic approach. So I think there could be a thing called Catholic economics. I'm still kind of working it through. Anyway, on this segment I just want to talk about why tariffs suck, because I find a lot of people don't understand some basic things about economics. And the fact that, President Trump is pushing tariffs, it just blows my mind. So anyway, a tariff is this, nothing more, nothing less. It is a tax on everyone to benefit a particular industry. Because if China wants to ship widgets into our country and we whack them with a tariff, that means they have to pay X dollars to our government to get them into the country. Therefore, in order to make a profit, they have to charge more. Well, who are they charging? Well, they're charging us more. And so now we have to pay more for the widgets. That then allows the widget producers in the United States the opportunity to charge more for their product because they don't need to cut in their profits to meet the Chinese price. And yes, it may help the industry. In fact, it definitely, at least in the short term, helps the industry who has the tariff protection. And that's what it is. It's protectionism for a particular industry. But in the long run, we know over and over again, it just makes the industry fat, lazy, and unmotivated because they know they have this protection out there. You may say, well, if we didn't have these tariffs, then industries X, Y, and Z would possibly fail and go bankrupt. And the answer to that is, yeah, so what? I mean, LegalZoom is eating into my profits as an estate planning lawyer. I don't expect to whack a tariff, put a special tax on online legal documents like an Electronic Stamp Act that Britain, levied on the colonies. No, it's just, that is what it is. As Joseph Schumpeter called it, creative destruction. And it's sad when things, it's sad that the buggy whip manufacturers went out of business when the car came. But that's just the way it is. And things move on and the economy grows and becomes better for it. The one reason I could possibly see to do tariffs would be to help infant industries get off the ground. So I kind of envision a baby bird trying to fly, and every time it starts to fly, a big eagle swoops down with his big wings and beats it down so it can't get up. And that's, if you have an infant industry trying to establish itself, and then these foreign competitors, every time this infant tries to get off the ground, they come in and flood the market with their product, keep the prices low so the infant industry can't make it. They can't make a profit. And it goes out of business. And then the big businesses from, outside the United States, then they jack the prices back up because they beat down the low-cost competitor. Okay, I guess maybe I could see that there in that situation where you may want to put some tariffs in. But let's face it, tariffs have been gifts to the well-connected. This is the classic Hudge and Gudge thing that G.K. Chesterton talks about. Big business, big government. It's big business that has the lobbying ability, has the connections, has the guys who hang out with the government guys in New York and Washington, D.C. They're the ones who get the tariff protection. It's not the new guy struggling to innovate and make an impact in the market. You just never see it. Tariffs are always a form of corruption for big businesses who are lobbying big government, and they're basically just cousins. So they work with each other. So yeah, I could make an argument there for infant businesses, but as a practical matter, you never ever see it. Stop raising it. It's not going to happen, especially in this era of big government. I could see maybe a real young business going to like a local city council and getting something like that, and it could work. That whole system could work. But big, with the federal government the way it is now, you're not going to get anything through unless you're a massive business already, at which point you shouldn't need any protectionism. If you're looking for protection as a big business, it's strictly because you're not innovating, you're not working hard enough. Alright, let's do some lighting segments. I was hanging out recently with a bunch of guys from Livonia, Michigan. Livonia is the biggest suburb of Detroit. Not positive about that, but I'm pretty sure it's the biggest suburb. I know at one point it was the fourth largest city in Michigan, at least in population, if not in area. But it reminded me of a story. I had an aunt and uncle, and their kids grew up in Livonia. One of my favorite stories is my uncle. He'd get up for work and have toast in the morning, and one morning he's telling my aunt, he's like, this toast just doesn't taste right. She goes, it's the same toast I make every morning for you. This is probably back in the 60s or early 70s, by the way. And then next morning he gets up and he's eating the toast. He's like, I'm telling you, Lenora, this toast just doesn't taste right. She goes, I just bought a fresh bag yesterday. He goes, it's fine, it's not stale. Next morning, the same thing. So finally, he gets up and he's just looking at the toaster. He's pounding the sides of it, and he tips the toaster upside down. And a dead burnt mouse falls out. That's one of my favorite stories of all time. That got me thinking about some of my favorite stories. And I think I have a ton of them, but I can't recall them all on the spot. But this one came to me. It was my son's senior year. My son Jack, and he hung out with a lot of real jock types, not jock, definitely not jock types, jock types. And they all had to go get a physical in order to participate in sports. And they talk about this doctor was having them, in their underwear, in a private room, in their underwear. They had to do things like walk like a duck and stuff like that, do all sorts of weird posturings. They didn't know what that was about. And one guy, big strapping stud's like, yeah, and then he stuck his finger, in the rectum. That kind of hurt. They're like, what? He stuck his finger in my rectum. And they're like, hey, I think you got molested. This guy's like, what? No! Another David Foster Wallace thing. I read another essay of his, but he talks about the GMNs. And I was like, what is that? He threw it out there like everyone knew what it was, but I had no idea what a GMN is. And it's the Great Male Narcissist. It refers to a literary school that arose after World War II, like Norman Mailer and John Updike. And I guess they're just reviled, or at this time of writing, back in the early 2000s, they're just reviled by the literary snobs of the time. Being 20 years hence, they're probably making a comeback at this point. But anyway, so if you see GMN, that's Great Male Narcissist. Hey, big news. Funny man Bill Burr is coming back to the Catholic Church. Okay, not really. Here's the story. On the December 20th episode of Joe Rogan, he tells Joe, hey, yeah, I'm going to go back to church. And he makes it clear it's Catholic Mass. He said, yeah, I went with my mother-in-law last year, or earlier this year, and I realized I kind of need this. And I kind of enjoyed it. So I'm going to start going back. He goes, I'm going to stand up, sit when I'm supposed to, but I'm not going to listen to an effing thing they say. So, it's not a very reverential segment, by the way. It goes on for like 5 minutes, and it's irreverent, and some of you might be offended by it, because Bill Burr is clearly just mocking the Catholic Church's teachings, but he says, there's something there. And again, I'm definitely paraphrasing him without the F word every 5 words. He's saying, there's something there, something I need. I'm going to go back, start going to church. And Rogan is very respectful. And Rogan, by the way, hates the Catholic Church. I'll talk about that in a second. But Rogan is respectful and said, hey, that's going to work for you type thing. So do it. So if you want to see what could be the beginning stirrings of a Holy Spirit and a celebrity, go check out that December 20th episode. It's episode 1219. It's at 1 hour and 56 minutes. That's where you'll hear the discussion. And I will warn you, you're gonna be, if you're real sensitive when it comes to Catholic things, don't listen, because it's gonna offend you. Joe Rogan, by the way, is a troubling person, and I've had to unsubscribe from his podcast on a few occasions because the dialogue is so over the top anti-Catholic. And I can see South Park making fun of the Catholic Church. I can hear other comedians do it. But what Rogan and his guests have done on occasion are so over the top, outrageously offensive that I felt like I needed to unsubscribe. So hopefully I and maybe 5,000 other people, Catholics, would unsubscribe and he'll see a dip when he does crap like that. I will say this for Rogan. On the 2 occasions it happened, it was really the guest who was really railing into the Catholic Church. Again, it wasn't railing the Catholic Church. They're just saying absolutely disgusting things regarding the clergy and the nuns, things like that. Stuff that just is totally uncalled for, no matter what the religion. And Rogan was just kind of laughing along, kind of joining in. And to Rogan's credit, he does that pretty much with all his guests. It's like when Bill Burr was actually saying something in his own odd way, halfway receptive to the Catholic Church, Rogan was respectful and kind of just played along with it as well. So I'm not sure it's Rogan as much as him just giving his guests room to roam. On a few occasions, Russ Roberts from Econ Talk has recommended the essays of David Foster Wallace. I finally broke down and bought a set of his essays. I think the essays, it's called What About the Lobster or something like that. David Foster Wallace was just an excellent essayist. I've read one of the essays, by the way, and I'll talk about it briefly. He was a great essayist who committed suicide, I think about 10 years ago. Very sad. But listen to Russ Roberts and Econ Talk. I get the impression David Foster Wallace just did these incredibly descriptive essays, kind of laid it out there, just very factual, keeping his opinions kind of in the background. I'm going to talk about that a little bit here in a second. And then saying things that might make you think. So one thing that Russ Roberts points out in his essay called Hosts, David Foster Wallace was writing about the shock jocks like Howard Stern. And at one point, David Foster Wallace said, aren't there parts of ourselves that are better left unfed? And as a Catholic, you shouldn't, not as a Catholic, I mean, anyone who understands, current neurological studies, the answer is heck yes. We know we don't want to feed the negative side of us because we know that side grows naturally by itself. So you don't want to, feed it with negative thoughts and negative actions on the screen. But David Foster Wallace points it out, and it makes you think. And a lot of people who don't appreciate that idea can now think, yeah, maybe I shouldn't listen to these shock jocks just to hear them be offensive and belittling people. I used to think, and this went on for years. I'm sorry to say, I was probably 40 or older before I realized it. I used to think you had to entertain negative thoughts or in order to stand up to them. Fears about the future, you gotta think about them so you can be a man and stand up to them. And that's just idiotic. It just turns you into a neurotic. I don't think it turned me into one. Those closest to me probably disagree. But I actually had that notion. So if you're a young person listening to this, I'm going to tell you right now, train your brain. Start figuring out what you need to train it with. But stay away from the negative stuff. I'd also tell you, stay away from porn. Fortunately, that's one thing I never did struggle with. So if I fed my brain with negative thoughts, I didn't feed it with porn. Thank freaking goodness. I can't condemn pornography strong enough. And I felt this way before I was Catholic, by the way. Again, it's just stupid. But it's also violent. It feeds the lust mechanism. And let's face it, lust is like negative thoughts. You don't freaking need to feed them. You want to increase your appetite for lust, or increase your lust appetite any more than you want to increase your appetite for ice cream and potato chips. We naturally love ice cream and potato chips. I do anyway. We naturally lust. We naturally have negative thoughts. These are things that are better left unfed. There's some studies I've heard that say pornographic images will stay with us for 7 years. And I believe it. Myself, I have a hard time getting images, just of any sort out of my head. Those, I'm sure, definitely stick with you. Because I have seen pornography, at bachelor parties back when, in my late teens, early 20s, whatever. And it's just awful stuff. I had all these thoughts going through my head when I downloaded my first David Foster Wallace book earlier this month. The very first essay I read was a huge essay. I mean, it must have been 10,000 words at least. It took me, well over an hour to read it. Probably 2 hours. I don't know how long, but a long time to read it. And the essay was all about the AVN Awards, the Adult Video News Awards, which is the porn industry's equivalent of the Oscars. And I tell you what, I'm a big David Foster Wallace fan, because this guy in the book, or in this essay, it's really hard to describe. I think he's a master, and he probably committed suicide because he was just a genius. This essay was just absolutely filthy, by the way. Not safe for work. That doesn't begin to do it justice. I couldn't even, I didn't want to read passages to Marie. We're driving down to check out, our nephew in the $1 Million Quartet performance in the Chicago suburb last week, and I'm reading it on the way down. She was driving, by the way. And I kept laughing. She goes, what do you, read to me what you're laughing about. I was like, I can't. I got the kids in the back seat. My kids are all teenagers, but this stuff was absolutely freaking filthy. But he laid it out there. That's just kind of funny. It's like, gosh. But I think his craft, his mastery was David Foster Wallace was like just a clinician describing what he saw. And on the surface, there's no judgmentalism about it. But then he put in little comments, and I think this is the way he crafted his sentences. You could tell he was just dripping with disgust. And maybe, if you're a big David Foster Wallace fan, you've read all his essays, maybe you've read a biography about him, I don't know. You can correct me in a heartbeat. My now David Foster Wallace goes to one essay I read about him. It wasn't an essay, it was like an article. Maybe a 1,000-word article. Russ Roberts' comments, and that one essay I read about the Adult Video News Awards. But anyway, the way I'm reading Foster Wallace is he just lays out all these facts and just describes what he saw out in Las Vegas at these porn industry Oscars. And you just walk away, at least I did. I walk away with a thorough disgust for the whole industry. If that was his intent, I worship at this guy's feet because he did it. And if you're a big porn fan, I'm not sure you see it, but I think it have an impact on you. So I don't know. And again, Wallace, if you were with us, maybe we'd say, hey, Shesky, I wasn't trying to make it anti-porn. I love porn. I was just telling you what I saw. At which point I'm even more in wonder at what he did here, because in my opinion, you can't read this thing without coming away with an unequivocally negative attitude about the porn industry, regardless of your attitude towards porn. And so if he said, I had no agenda whatsoever, because that's kind of how he presents it. if he had no agenda whatsoever, it's like, wow, then he just did a really, really honest job, because I don't think I could read this essay without coming away just being totally disgusted by what you read. I mean, he just talks about things like one video. I think this was one that was up for an award back in 1998 or whenever he wrote this essay, 2003. This director had, the starlet, as they call him, in a scene. Is just like a series of men, like 20 men, just walked up and spit in her face. It wasn't even sexual. It was just, it's totally misogynistic, and I hate that word. It means hatred for women, and it's all this social justice crap wrapped up into it. You don't mean misogynistic. It's just filled with hate and a love for the disgusting, and that's all pornography is. So anyway, I'm going to read more David Foster Wallace. I wouldn't be shocked if I comment on his essays every other podcast from this point forward. Alright, that's a wrap. Check out the Twitter feed, check out the Facebook page, go to udemonpodcast.com for show notes and other information. As always, thanks for listening.